Alright, hello everyone. This series of videos is going to be a first-time startup guide of the OpenExo system. In these videos, we'll go into downloading some of the software you'll need in order to be able to run the Exo. And then once we do that, we'll download the Exo code from GitHub and then upload that code to the exoskeleton. And in that process, we'll also be setting parameters for our first trial, such as what controller we're using, what configuration of the exoskeleton we're using, and also torque magnitudes, and so on and so forth. Then once we do that, we'll be ready for our first trial. We'll go ahead and start conducting our first trial. For that first trial, we're going to be using the step controller, which is a simple on-off pattern of torque application. And then once we do that first trial with the step controller, we'll go into doing another trial with the Franks-Collins controller, which is a bit more of a complex controller. It uses FSRs to estimate the wearer's gait pattern, and then based on that estimated gait pattern, it will prescribe torque. And then once we've done that, verified that everything's worked properly, we'll go into some more information on future use, setting other controllers, and possibly developing your own controller if you would like. Also important to note here is that we are using the hip assistance only configuration of OpenExo, which is the configuration you'll end up with provided you follow the build guide up to this point. Another important thing to note is that you'll need a micro SD card for this guide. You'll need a micro SD card to be able to run the exoskeleton in the first place. What it does is it provides the Teensy with parameters for what configuration of the OpenExo you're using, what controller you're using, torque magnitudes, so on and so forth. Without the SD card, the exoskeleton can't run. So you want to make sure that you have a micro SD card. The storage size really isn't important. The smallest size that I've seen has been 8 gigabytes, which is way more than what we need. We're just uploading a few CSV files to it. And then regarding the motors being used in this guide, I'm going to be using the AK60 V1.1s. OpenExo supports a variety of motors. Out of the CubeMars AK series of motors, it supports the AK60, AK60 V1.1, AK70, and AK80. Work is currently being done also to support the AK60 V3 motors. And then in addition to the CubeMars AK series of motors, we also recently introduced support for Maxon motors. If you're using Maxon motors, there will be a separate video guide on this setup process dedicated specifically to those variety of motors. Provided you follow the build guide, you'll be using the same motors as I am, the AK60 V1.1s. However, if you're using any of the other AK series of motors, the only thing that's going to be different is when we go into the SD card, into the configuration files, you're just going to set a different motor, or the motor that you're using as opposed to the motor that I'm using. So if you're using the AK80 motor, instead of in the SD card saying that you're using the V1.1, you'll just say that you're using the AK80. Other than that, the process is identical.